The Ethiopian Prime Minister and regional authorities have launched a campaign to support the rehabilitation and reconstruction of the restive Tigray region. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the regional presidents and city administrators launched a solidarity initiative for the Tigray Regional Provisional Administration and the people of the region on Thursday. The Tigray region has been rocked by conflict since November 2020, and this has seen loss of life and hundreds of thousands of people displaced, both internally and in neighbouring states. I spoke to the Ethiopian Ambassador to South Africa, Shiferaw Teklemariam, about the situation in the Tigray region and the accusations levelled against the Ethiopian government about rights abuses. Ambassador, the situation in Tigray is drawing quite a lot of attention all over the world now. And I just wonder if you could give us an update on what is the situation on the ground in Tigray?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Peter. As you rightly mentioned, this is one of the current issues back at home and then elsewhere. The major objectives of the law enforcement operation in Tigray was three, as we know very well. The first one was to disarm the Tplf junta. The second one was to restore the provisional administration in Tigray region. And the third one is to ensure the rule of law, and in doing so also bring the fugitives or culprits into justice. So this is basically done in terms of disarming the junta and others. Now, what is exactly happening now? You know, the Tplf, while they were retreating from the capital, Mekelle, and different places, there was a serious destruction of infrastructures. Now, infrastructures which you may use for any kind of access: telecommunication, power, road, bridge, airport, hospitals, facilities, and so on and so on. So for any kind of next steps, there is a huge demand to reconstruct these infrastructures and rebuild these infrastructures. And as you may rightly know, also there are people who are affected. So the resettlement as well as humanitarian access to the affected is very, very important engagements, and the number of meshes that which the Tplf junta is responsible and cleaning those ones are now what the government of Ethiopia, in coordination with the provisional administration and the people of Tigray, are engaged with right now.
Is there still fighting happening on the ground with the government forces and the Tigray forces?
You know, this law enforcement operation is, as we discussed several times, triggered by the Tplf junta looking for an impunity and also dominance and rejecting the reform agenda, which the Tplf junta itself was part of it. So the subsequent implementation process was very much challenged, and finally they ended up by attacking what you call the treasonous attack to the National Defense Force, National Command of the Ethiopian National Defense Force. So when that happened, Tplf was preparing itself to say in massive terms, training thousands of militia and special forces who were ready to launch what you call a proper war against the federal government. So when the law enforcement operation has taken place, this number of militia and special forces, in fact also those who defected from the National Defense Force and police, during their retreat, they are hiding themselves on several parts of particular non-mountainous areas. So even though very much of everything is already done, there are spontaneous engagements and confrontations with these loyalists who are here and there, and which the federal government, in cooperation with the Provisional administration and the people of Tigray, is working to bring them in front of justice and before the justice.
There are accusations that civilians are getting caught up in this and that government forces may be killing innocent citizens. What do you know of what's going on? Are soldiers perhaps going beyond war and now engaged in killing people just because they believe they belong to the Tplf?
This is an unfounded and a fabricated accusation, by the way, up front. The Ethiopian National Defense Force, and also with its values and beliefs, it has been always not even on domestic engagements, but also internationally and continentally. They were known for much of their well-known good practices. In fact, in that very process, the government has taken serious measures not to create any kinds of such atrocities at any circumstances. On the other hand, there is also an institution already, in fact, a task team that is forced from relevant organizations, from Minister of Peace, Minister of Defense, Attorney General, and also other relevant ministries to look for any kind of violations, any kinds of human rights violation, for example, to look into it, and if anyone found guilty, then they will be facing the first-hand, what you call justice as well. As you know, Peter, the whole process was to make sure Ethiopia will be a country of full-blown democratic practices, and also an opportunity for anyone on equal basis. And then one of the reasons the Tplf was defined is actually to ensure its own impunity and dominance. So there is no anyone within the rule of law that will be beyond and above the rule of law. So anyone who found guilty of such action then will be responsible. And the federal government is doing it by organizing a task team towards that objective.
And that includes any government soldiers that may be...
Exactly. Anyone, no one can be beyond and above the rule of law. In fact, the serious triggering factor for the law enforcement operation is basically exactly that is, no one can be a rule of law. As we have been explaining before, Tplf became like a safe haven for all kinds of people, suspects of corrupt practices, human rights violations. So this was basically the reform agenda of the nation, and when it comes to anyone else, it applies.
We are also hearing that Eritrean soldiers, forces may also be in the region. Why is that?
Such accusations has been presented several times to the Ethiopian government, to our own government, as well as to Eritrean government. As all of now, this is again unfounded, unverified, and also, of course, orchestrations that for the many things that are happening. I'll give you one important piece of information, Peter. While the Tplf was retreating, the Tplf junta was retreating, they released close to more than 10,000 detainees from the prisons so that they can do whatever things that can happen. And also they made uniforms, the military uniforms, similar to the Ethiopian as well as Eritrean ones, so that they will use these people through these dresses, that something is happening through the other members or other government operating facilities right there. So this was intentionally done in such a way that whatever wrongdoings will be reflected, whether that's happening with the other organization.
Humanitarian organizations are saying that access to the region is being restricted. They can't get to the people that are in need and can't get the assistance to the people in need in the region. Why has access been restricted?
Again, as we very much understand, during the law enforcement operation on initial phase, this was one of the elements which the federal government was trying to put in place side by side. As we speak, the Minister of Peace of the Ethiopian federal government is now the main coordinating ministry, and the United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Office, which we call it UN OCHA, is like a co-chair in that very platform. And as we speak, there are more than 36 waradas, 92 distribution points that are already accessible, and whatever humanitarian support is now reaching as we speak. And in terms of even getting the proper the licensing issue, then about 75 members are also granted a permission so that they will go into. In fact, you may remember the authorities of United Nations Refugee Commission and the World Food Program authorities. They have been all visiting to different parts of Tigray to make sure and to see for their own eyes whatever is said elsewhere is really a correct one or not. By the way, Peter, no one, I should emphasize this, no one could be more responsible than our own citizens elsewhere. And people pretend that they are more concerned than the humanitarian aspect in the Tigray region. Tigray region is part of Ethiopia, and the people in Tigray are Ethiopians. And the Ethiopian government is more responsible, genuinely responsible, for what is happening there. On the other hand, 70% of the support for the current humanitarian support is coming from the pocket of the Ethiopian government. And it's only 30% of the support that is coming from the rest of humanitarian organizations. And the Ethiopian government is very serious. And as we speak, close to 1.6 million beneficiaries are getting the support from the government. It's about 600,000 of the beneficiaries who are getting from the UN and other international organizations. This clearly indicates that the government is more committed, and of course more committed because it's its own citizens. It's not like to please someone else somewhere. We know, and we are very much aware, whatever good reasons and good causes, they will not be reporting those guys. And we know the reason behind to that as well. So whether they said it that way or the other way, it's our task and it's our responsibility, and it's the federal government's assignment to make sure its own citizens are well taken care of.
Talking about reporting, journalists are saying that they're also being denied access to the region so that they can see firsthand what's happening and report on it independently. Are journalists allowed to move in the region?
Peter, this is a very important question. Of course, there is no reason no journalist will not be allowed anywhere. But we have to make sure that those journalists also will come back safely from where they have gone. Because once any citizen from any part of any corner of the continent or elsewhere, we have the responsibility, we are the sovereign country, to make sure whoever is moving around is first of all respecting the rule of law. Second, their safety and security is maintained. Otherwise, as we speak now, more than 85% of the geographical land is now well under control, well maintained. and leave alone journalists. The major UN agencies, agency directors and the chief of them are now traveling to Tigray, and domestically all government as well as private journalists are also moving there. So anyone who wanted, they can apply. Of course, applying means they have to respect the rule of law, and whenever that is feasible and whenever that is acceptable, where the government is ready to cooperate all the time. But the caveat is, Peter, the caveat is they have been reporting all the time as we speak. So from where are they bringing those reports? So it means they are illegally or in some way, if it means, then by virtue what they are doing is fabricating, while they are claiming that they are not getting any access, but at the same time, they are found to produce such kind of reports every day and night, every fabrications. In fact, I was fortunate enough to view some of their communications, and I saw how they were trying to bring atrocities of 1999, which was actually done by Tplf junta itself, as it's happening today. And also I saw one of the articulation of photoshopping. They use what you call an application to bring things from the different parts of the continent as if it is happening today in the soil of Tigray. These people, they have never said, they have never mentioned Tplf is actually the responsible entity of all these messes that's happening in the region, and also they have orchestrated, including the National Defense Force attack, 114 violent conflicts in the nation, in the country. They have been found never condemning any of those statements at any given time, except they're always there to tarnish Ethiopia's image and also at the same time to undermine the sovereignty of our country, which is not acceptable, which cannot happen. And these people, whether they are allowed in or not, I'm not sure, I think also they change their position, because whatever they are doing is basically for their pockets, purely speaking, and probably blatantly speaking what they are doing and what they are looking for.
Are you suggesting that the many videos and pictures that are doing the rounds on social media at the moment are a fiction, that they are fabrication and part of some propaganda, that they're not authentic?
Peter, I will assure you, and we have some of those pictures, so we can go through them, and we passed through them testing as well, in terms of verifying their sources, and also in some of them how they were brought to link one from the other from the different places. These people are totally occupied with fabrications. In fact, fabrications targeted to Ethiopia is also fabrications targeted to continent. I would say because our continental news outlets, we are not working on the narratives properly, and also we are not defending the continent. The Western media is totally occupied to put the narrative so that we can take it up and then entertain the same by reciprocating what they have disseminated, which at this very stage, Peter, by the way, we are now about to celebrate 125th anniversary of the Adwa victory in this month, and so on and so on. And one of the spirit is that we in the continent, Ethiopia as well as the rest part of the continent, we were all the time seen like a minority in all aspects, which we cannot manage ourselves. We cannot able not to plan for ourselves. So we have to be dictated. All the narratives must be given for us from somewhere else. And this is, for me, what you call a modern colonialism that is circulating around again and again.
All right, let's talk about the way forward then. What is the path to peace at this time? Because this conflict now has gone on for quite some time. whilst the government has taken control of the region and is trying to restore temporary government in Tigray, people continue to die and people continue to be displaced. Is there now perhaps room for international mediation?
Peter, again, this is a very important point you mentioned. I think the law enforcement operation in Tigray region is basically a domestic and an internal affair. Now, as we speak, the responsible entity, the Tplf junta, is now over. So there is no, in fact, our National Electoral Board, I think rationally and reasonably, also dismissed this organization from a record again. And the reason is that no opposition party in the nation can exist while treasonably attacking, engaged in all kinds of terrorist activities and defying all the constitutional order and safely exist in a given nation. No, that drama is over now. So the next, what will happen next is, Peter, once the responsible organization for all the messes is over, now we can enjoy the democracy and prosperity which we are envisaging all the time. So what will happen is we will be introducing, including in Tigray, the provisional administration as time allows to be replaced by what we call an institutional mechanism, which usually comes through the election process. And then the region also will start to enjoy the democracy and prosperity which we envisaged, and as a reform process, which will be also part of the nation's engagement. The second part is there are culprits that are not brought to justice again. So further movement, further activities also will be taken to bring them in front of before the justice, so that all culprits will appear in front of the court. The final one is, I think, the peace aspect. The people of Tigray, and there is a part of the nation's the nation's citizens, no question about that. So they will themselves be part of the all kinds of activities, all kinds of plans of democratization and the prosperity engagement, and also with a provisional government being translated into what you call through the election process, of course, to a legitimate to the legitimate regional government. Then that will take them to join freely, by the way, freely, through full freedom, without any kind of imposition, without any kind of consequences because of their ideas, because of their aspirations. Then we move forward to build the nation, the democratic and the prosperous nation which we would like to achieve, and which is relevant for the Horn of Africa as well as for the continent.
All right. Will Addis Ababa allow the Tplf to be part of the future of Tigray?
I think Tplf, as it stands and as we speak, is an institution which is now has several criminal records already, and the Attorney General already established 3 kinds of criminal activities that are done by the Tplf. The first one is the treasonous attack, which we have already indicated to Ethiopian National Defense Force. The second one is defying the constitutional order. And the third one is the terrorism, which they definitely conduct. So within this framework, now they are going to face those arrestees. They are going to face the justice system. And as we see, Tplf, with the current behavior, practice, and also without and now with this ambition of impunity and dominance, it will never be part of the Ethiopian political as well as economical sphere as it stands now.
And perhaps finally, again, information very hard to come by. Do we know how many people have died in this conflict and how many people have been displaced with what's been happening in the Tigray region?
Yeah, Peter, again, I think the number of the deceased for any reason or for the killings, so and so on, which is basically perpetrated by the Tplf itself, and all the messes need a further and organized investigation so that we will have a proper picture, and the time is going to tell us that detail. The second one is in terms of displacement so far. There are about 200,000 internally displaced persons, and of course, as we know, there are also individuals on the other side of Ethiopia, which is Sudan. So within that, what we are currently working is with a humanitarian access for close to or even more than 2.5 million people, which those out of those, now 1.6 million is supported by the Ethiopian government, and the other 600,000, that equates to 2.2 million as we speak, which is well addressed, and daily rations are done, and WFP and the Ethiopian government and the other organizations, local as well as international organizations, are now busy around the clock to address that very issue.
All right, so you can't give me a number. Is it thousands? Is it tens of thousands of people that have been killed? And are you saying that the government forces haven't killed any civilians?
I think it will be very immature now to start to speculate any of those numbers, because as we know, this has to go a proper accounting system and also proper investigation of all the same. And as we speak at this particular time, I have no numbers on that, Peter.
Right, that's Ethiopia's ambassador to South Africa speaking to me a little bit earlier on, denying allegations that the Ethiopian government has been part of any rights abuses in the northern part of the country in the Tigray region.